All right. So I am now recording. So getting back to the exam, as far as hybrid orbitals, if I remember correctly, I don't think I asked any questions about hybrid orbitals. I don't think I put that in anywhere. Obviously, it's in the homework, so you'll still have to understand it at least somewhat for that. But I don't think it ended up making it into the exam, just because you should know how to do it. Let me just go over that real quickly. So usually the way that I would ask questions is I would ask you to figure out what the hybridization was for something. So if I had a molecule like this. So we have this molecule. So we have carbon here in the middle, 2 fluorines attached to it and 1 oxygen. The carbon has 4 bonds to it, but only 3 groups of electrons, because this is a group, and each of these are groups, so it only has 3 groups. So to determine the hybridization, you would just count up the number of groups, and however many groups there are, whether they're bonding groups or lone pairs, you need that many atomic orbitals. And so we would just start with S and work our way up. We need 3, so we would have sp2, because we have 1 s and then 2 p orbitals, which would give us 3. And so this would be sp2 hybridized, is what that would be called. And so it's essentially that. So I seem to remember that there were other, there might have been an example that was something like this. I don't know if that's an actual molecule or not, but I seem to remember seeing that at some point, where you have your iodine here, and it actually has 5 groups. 4 of them are bonds, 1 of them is a lone pair. We don't actually care about the number of bonding versus lone pairs. All we care about is the total number of groups. So because we have 5 here, it would be sp3d. We have 1 s atomic orbital. We're going to use all 3 of the p orbitals, but we still need 1 more because that's only 4, and so we take 1d. And so that sp3d hybridized is what that would be. How do we know which ones to use? Is that what you're asking? Which atomic orbitals to use? So you're just following the relative energies of those atomic orbitals. So if you remember, for example, in the 4th shell, so if n equals 4, in that shell you will have the 4s, you'll have 4p, why did I write sp? 4p, you'll have 4d, and you'll have 4f. So you have all of these subshells there. The lowest energy is S, next up is P, and then D, and then F. And so we're just starting with the lowest energy, and we're not worrying about specifying which shell these come from. That's not part of the hybridization. It's just saying, because we have one orbital in the S, we have 3 in P, 5 in D, and 7 in F. We're never going to get up to the point where we would use the F orbitals, because we only have space for 6 things around that atom, and so we could use the S, all 3 of the P's, and then up to 2 of the D atomic orbitals to make our hybrid orbitals. And so you just always start with the lowest energy and work up. Does that answer your question? If you're unsure, like, did you come across something like a question where you weren't sure what the answer is? Because if I could answer the question, that might help clear up the confusion. Okay. Sure, Casey. Go ahead. Let me clear it for you. There you go. So if you want to try and draw something like a molecule where you don't know what the hybridization is, feel free to do that. Casey, oh, there it is. Okay. Okay. Oh, is this going to end up being phosphate, perhaps? Okay. So that is the phosphate ion. So normally not in a Lewis structure, we would see it would look like this. So that is PO4 3 minus. And so Casey, is your question, what would the hybridization of this be? What is its hybridization? Is that what your question is? Okay, so the hybridization for this would be sp3. And we know that because if we look at the central atom, which is the only thing we're concerned about when it comes to the hybridization of molecules like this, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 groups. And again, we're not counting bonds, we're counting groups. So we're counting the things attached to the central atom. So there are 4 groups attached to the central atom, so we need 4 atomic orbitals. So we get 1 from the s, and then 3 p's, which gives us 4 atomic orbitals, which combine together to give us 4 new hybridized orbitals. That would it would make this have a tetrahedral shape. So it would actually have the same overall shape as water, actually, when you look at the where the electron groups are, or methane. Does that answer your question, Casey? Or does the homework disagree with me? Does the homework say it should be something else? No problem. All right. Let me see. So just real quickly here, I want to review what we're going to be doing for the rest of the semester here, which, the last 2 weeks. So this week we have exam 3. And like I mentioned, all the videos for the class are up, and so you should have the ability to watch all of those and finish all the homework, get ready for the exam, as well as get ready for the final. Let's see. I think all the labs are up and available as well. Yes, so we have the gas lab, the light lab, the Lewis structure, and VSCPR. So everything you need to finish all of those is up and available. So please get those done as quickly as possible. And the VSCPR and Lewis structure things are good practice for the exam as well, making sure that you know how to work through those. I think that's pretty much it, other than just making sure that everyone is getting the homework done. So please be sure to keep up with that. You don't want to try and be finishing, 100 homework questions in the last 2 days of class before they're due. So be sure that you are keeping up with that in addition to studying for the exam. Are there other questions about the exam or topics on the exam that you would like me to talk through, at least as much as I can? No? Okay, well, there's still stuff that I would like to talk about, and if you're in the process of writing a question, please keep writing it. I think what I would like to do right now is I'd like to go through at least some of the slides to kind of explain to you how some of the questions are going to be asked. So like, for example, I've mentioned in previous weeks I didn't know how I was going to do like via CPR and Lewis structures and things like that, where I can't have you drawing. In a normal class where you would have a paper exam, you could just draw the structures yourself. But here, obviously, you can't do that, at least not where I can see it. And so I'm going to talk to you about how I am trying to get around those struggles, along as just, or as well as just going through and just like normal, telling you stuff that I think is important, that will be on the exam and things like that. So if no one has any questions they would like to talk about at the moment. So the final will, I hope, I will have it up and available starting on Monday. And it'll be just like any other exam where it will be available for multiple days. Will those be entered before the final? So the homework grades, you should have those pretty much immediately. I believe it shows you your score as you're going along. As to entering them in Blackboard, I'm not sure when I will move those over, but if you're just curious as to your grade, you should be able to see those scores in Sapling, and the number of points shouldn't change. Like Sapling should show you the number of points that you've earned, and that number is not going to change when I put it into Blackboard. A point in the homework is the same as the point in an exam. It's the same as a point in the lab. So all that stuff will be the same. As far as labs, I honestly don't know. It'll take me some time to finish writing the exams, and that is the more urgent thing at this point, because they have to be up and available for students to take. As soon as I get those done, my attention will shift to grading stuff as quickly as possible. But for now, I need to get those exams done first, so it'll kind of depend. I hope to have at least some of those labs graded early next week. It'll just depend on how much time I can find to create the finals. So I can't really make any promises there. I'll have to see what happens. Let's see. What do you need to know if we want to choose? So I don't need to know, actually. You do not have to tell me. From my understanding, the no pass, the pass no pass, if you fail the class, which I hope none of you do, if you fail the class, I believe automatically you are switched to the pass no pass grading scheme, if you want to call it that. Although I would still encourage you to double check by calling in to academic affairs or whoever it would be, student services probably. But I believe that is automatically done if you don't pass the class, if you get a failing grade, I think. If you want to switch to just pass, so if you weren't happy with your grade, your letter grade, and you'd rather have a pass, I don't do that. There's nothing that I don't even think that's an option for me to do, even if I wanted to. My understanding is that you will have to contact either student services or academic counseling or something like that to ask them to switch. And you can do that up to 7 days past the final grades being turned in, I believe. So I think, let's see, what day would that be? So next week is final, so grades would be due that. So I think, and again, don't just take my word for this. Go and do your own research as well. But I believe the 19th of May would be the last day that you could switch to the pass no pass, because the grades are due the 12th. That is the last chance that I have to turn them in before I get in big trouble. And my understanding is that once grades are due, you have 7 days. So I guess depending on how they count that, it could be the 18th. So if they're due on Tuesday, then you would have 7 days past that. So it's either the 18th or the 19th would be the last chance you would have to switch. But that is something that you would have to do. No, Catherine, you did not miss something. So that last bit about the models, we're just going to have to skip that. So in that VSEPR lab, the first 2/3 or so of the lab, you don't need any models or anything like that. It's just figuring out the shapes. You can do that on your own. If we had been in class, I would have had models for you to look at, but obviously we are not. And at this point, I just want you to get it done. So you will just skip that part of the lab where it talks about looking at models. All right, any other questions before we jump into talking about some topics? Really want to know what will be on the exam. All right, I will give you some information. Can't tell you everything, but I will give you some information.